My name's Jill Rowe, and in this episode of The Different Podcast, I talk with Steve Chalke about getting to the thing behind the thing. We discuss how easy it is to not go upstream and discover the root causes of the challenges we can face, both personally and societally. We explore how we can get trapped in a cycle of reacting rather than finding lasting solutions and building the inclusion and belonging required and the bravery needed. And we dive deeper into the significance and place of spirituality at the heart of those lasting solutions, challenging the notion that spirituality is just a side hustle. Hello, Steve.
Hi there, Jill. Yeah.
You're just enjoying looking at your new laptop, aren't you?
I've got a new laptop, which is an extraordinary thing. Well, the other one just didn't work, so I was given a new one, and this one does whiz-bang things. But unfortunately, one of the whiz-bang things it does is it actually, for the first time, picks up on the Wi-Fi in any Oasis building, because I know they're supposed to do that, but my ones have never, ever done that. Until we're sitting here and we're supposed to be, quiet, and it kept going ping, 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 and that's how I realised after 20 years of having computers that won't do it, and everyone says Steve, they should do it, but they didn't. I've got one that does it at just the moment when I didn't want it to.
As you were saying that, I was reminiscing because I'm in my 29th year, aren't I, in Oasis, and I was reminiscing to arriving in Oasis. When our office was on Blackfriars.
Ah, yeah.
And I remember being handed like this dead weight of a laptop, which I was really excited about because I'd never had a computer before. But it was 15th hand, it had done the circuit. And it was already given to us by a bank, maybe, or something. But what I remember is the emails, how Brian used to print them off.
Yes.
Because they only came in one laptop, one computer.
Yeah, one computer. That's true.
And then he'd come put a piece of paper on our desk.
Yeah, because remember you used to go online and it used to make all those kind of noises. I don't know why did it make all those noises.
I don't know, but it was great, wasn't it?
And then
you think there's millions of people who have no idea what we would be talking about when we say that.
We say we only had one computer that received emails.
It was that one.
Thinks, well, you must be really broke. But actually, nobody had more than one computer that received emails.
No,
and
but it was quite funny
slowly
as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's great to see you.
Yeah, so now I'll go. And it's even quite light, this one.
Very good. Good for your back.
Yes.
A wise person once said to me, Jill, it's really important to always think about what's the thing behind the thing. And I thought that's a profound statement.
There's always a thing behind the thing.
Yeah. And in all sorts of ways, you can apply that to so many areas of life. But it made me think about that illustration of people drowning in the river, Steve. What's all that about?
Oh, that illustration of drowning. Well, that don't they always say? I think it's true. What we've got to do is go upstream. You hear people say that. So let's look at this problem by going upstream, and it's all related to this famous quote that everybody disputes who first said it. Was it William Booth or all sorts of people? Yeah. But the point was, instead of trying to fish people out of the river downstream who've fallen in and are drowning, why don't we go upstream and find out why they keep falling in, and perhaps build a bridge across the river so that no one falls in? And in life, of course, whether it's personal or it's individual, or whether it's a systemic thing, very often we find ourselves addressing, all these kids have fallen in the river, or these elderly people have fallen in the river, or these young people have fallen into into addiction or whatever, and that's been horrific for them. Instead of just trying to fish them out, why don't we go back and find out why it is that all this is breaking down, and build a bridge there, which might be in the form of a new policy for government, which might be in the form of some new relationships, etc.
So by utilising that kind of illustration, the thing behind the thing. So you hear a lot. We've got a mental health crisis.
Yeah, exactly.
We've got a SEN crisis.
Yeah, we've got a halve knife crime. That's one. I've been in a meeting today with some government people about that. We got a halve knife crime, and I said, you can't. It's impossible because it's just a symptom. Knife crime is a symptom of loneliness, of poverty, of lack of belonging, of closed youth centres, of kids hanging about on streets, of kids not being able to afford the trainers that everybody else is wearing are advertised to them on every bus and et cetera, et cetera. And someone comes along and says, if you'll carry this little package on the bus or the train, here's 50 quid. Yeah. And you think, I can get the right T-shirt or whatever it might be with the right logo. And you're drawn as what they always call them youngers, don't they? You're drawn into a gang. You become a mule. Yeah. And as you become a mule, you end up carrying a knife because you're told that's what you need to do. So in order to halve knife crime, you've got to double inclusion. Yeah. And if you find policies that double inclusion, like opening some things for kids to go to instead of hanging around on street corners, you'll find your knife crime problem disappears. The other thing, whilst I'm on it, you can't solve knife crime by banning knives because you can kill someone with a knitting needle or a sharpened screwdriver, etc., etc. Yeah. What you've got to do is remove that enmity and that hatred and that the grooming that takes place. And you only do that by including people in.
So how do we, because it feels
that's just one illustration, isn't it?
But it feels to me like we have like a bit of an addiction to a short-termism, to an emergency approach to. So we lurch. If I'm being a bit like down on this, but we seem to lurch from crisis to crisis, and at large we tend to want quick fix to those crises rather than going, hang on a minute.
And without getting too political, that's the trap that governments always fall into, isn't it? Because they get a 5-year term, and the last year's no good because that's all campaigning. So you've got to achieve something quick in the first couple of years. You've got to turn things around. But the reality is, to really turn things around, you need long-term strategies and long-term plans. But the politician wants to please the voter. Yeah. And so they play into the short-term stuff, which isn't ever going to work, which is why we get so many initiatives to end knife crime. I mean, we've been doing it as long as I've been an adult, and it's getting worse, Yeah. And that's because no one addresses the real issue behind the thing, behind the thing, which is all about loneliness, lack of belonging. We all belong to gangs, by the way. We talk about kids belonging to gangs. Well, I belong to some gangs, but they sit around in a rather sedate way. Yeah. It's sipping red wine or whatever it is, They're still gangs. Yeah. We need to belong.
And if we don't go upstream and do whatever that bridge, whatever it is that needs to be constructed up there to stop people drowning down here, what we do is we're caught up in this rescuing thing. But it seems to be that's the environment where blame then starts to take on a life of its own, almost.
Absolutely. And I mean, we should talk about this at a personal level for us and for others as well. But whilst we're talking about systems, do you see, that's, there's, I don't know what people think about what I'm just about to say. That's the problem with Ofsted, isn't it? In schools, for that you may experience as a teacher or a child or as a parent, but Ofsted comes in and they mark this school one way or the other with no context of what's actually happening in this community, what's going on in this community, and what's the real work of this school, and what's
over time
pulling through. And no context that, as you know, I say very often, all behaviour is communication. So antisocial behaviour, anger, etc., anxiety, withdrawal, you know, these are all behaviours that are communicating something that's going on inside of a person. Now, what we now know, because of the science, brain science, about childhood and adolescent development and the impact of poverty, and it's called the wider determinants of health. You know, there's lots of science around it. So we know that poverty, where you live, your built environment, your social environment, we know that all of this has a huge impact on who you are, your health, not just physically, but mentally, etc., your ability to concentrate, whatever it might be. So we know that all that counts. But I often think that some people who try to regulate schools, they're in denial of the science. They're like the educational equivalent of flat earthers. You know, they are, because we know the Earth is round. We know the Earth is round, and we know that we're one planet revolving round our sun, which is part of a bigger, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But you know, people come along and say, this child is behaving wrongly. They're not meeting the required standards. Therefore, they're falling behind. Therefore, this school is letting them down. That is flat earth mentality. It's like, woohoo! Like in denial of everything we know about humanity. We're going to continue with this ridiculous belief, instead of saying, so how do we change the system to meet the needs of this child? Isn't it extraordinary, whilst on the educational thing, you know, because we're coming up to exam time.
We're in it.
Record this. Yeah, it's just started, hasn't it?
English.
Not just coming up. Exactly.
Today.
And the very subject that I was going to mention. You can still get marked down in this country in your English language exam because you can't read the words correctly in the question, or you spell the words wrongly in your answers. If you can't do grammar and correct spelling, you're going to get marked down. But that's because you're dyslexic. And with the science, we know that's true. And yet, this is not to do with Ofsted, of course. This is to do with the exam boards. It's like flat earthers again, isn't it? It's like we know this, but we don't do it. So we've got to go upstream. There is always a thing behind a thing. Yeah. I should get away from education and not talk about that anymore.
You went for it there.
Yeah. Well,
no, and it's good. It's fine. It's good. It's good. And just, I guess, connected with that, because I feel like there's this giant gap around understanding spirituality and how that creates this incredible buffer for people in terms of their resilience, their well-being, their relationships, their sense of belonging, their connection with community, all of that stuff. And yet we leave it out, like in all of that systemic thing, you know, like whether it's health or whether it's, you know, education, we're like, well, you know, that's for some. No, it's what it means to be human.
Well, you know, I mean, this sounds
you can't. What worries? Well, not worries me, but you can't pay your way out of everything being an emergency. There is not enough money to fund.
Yes,
is there? So unless we go upstream, unless we ask those braver questions.
Yeah. Well, therefore, I'm just going to talk about the UN, which I will. But to just return to the educational thing, you know, if our economy is going to succeed, every young person is going to be a lifelong contributor to our economy or a lifelong cost to it. So to throw away a third of the children that go through our educational system, can you imagine running a training course for 14 years and going to a training course for 14 years? Just at the end of it, all the way through, they tell you you're useless. And at the end of it, they tell you you're a failure. Right? It's a very expensive training course that just tells you you're useless at the end. How many people does that happen to? And is that helping our economy? And and don't even get into AI and the jobs that we think are highly priced that are going to disappear, whereas a lot of the caring professions and the trades, etc., they're not going to disappear. No AI is going to do carpentry or plumbing for you, etc., or the caring professions. For an aging population, we need to look after an aging population with care. You can't get a robot to do that. I know people say you can do a robot. I don't suppose you want to end your days being cared for. Hello, So that's why I call it flat earthness. It's like a denial of some kind of denial of reality or thinking about it. We need to go upstream. And I would have said before, my wife Cornelia, who I've not mentioned in this thing.
My wife Cornelia,
and,
as you always tell us.
But I would have said before, Cornelia always says to me that the more stressed I am, the more stupidly I behave. And the more, not just behave, the things I say. We're all like that, though, aren't we? It applies to her as well, actually. So we're as bad as one another. But the truth is, when we are stressed, we say things we don't mean to say and then have to apologise for it to someone afterwards. Or we do things that are rash and think, why did I do that? It's because we were stressed. And the more stressed you are, the more out of control your brain gets. Your management centre of your brain fails you and it breaks down, and that's why some people go and punch somebody and then wish they hadn't, or whatever it might be, or swear at somebody. But the reality is there are many children in our society. They always live in hypertension, in stress. It's not that they go from 0 to 100% all in one go and then do so. They're already stressed because they never felt calm and secure. And it's not just children; it's all the way through the years. But we bump into someone and we don't see the thing behind the thing, so we judge superficially. Whereas we don't want to be judged superficially ourselves. When I say something unkind or do something selfish, it's always because I've got a headache, I've had a long, hard day, I've not had a day off for ages. You have no idea how much work I've got to get through in the next few hours, and I'm racing and, I can't.
And you need some food.
Yeah. Whereas when you do something wrong, it's just because you're that kind of person.
Because I'm an idiot. Yeah.
It's a strange thing. Isn't it? But there's always a thing behind the thing for us all. So deal with, treat others with the same compassion and consideration that I expect of myself, which is the hard and challenging bit to me.
And so that invitation to go upstream is both macro, like we need to think about that systemically, but also, as you say, on a personal level, we need to kind of get our heads to think, go upstream, don't jump in with that comment or that judgment or that, go upstream and ask what's the thing behind the thing. I was really interested, may feel like a bit of a tangent, but I was really interested in the way that two things. People responded to the Artemis 2, whatever that was. Expedition,
Trip to the moon,
to the far side of the moon, the other side of the moon. And just how it captivated people. Like it met something that sits behind everything for people, didn't it? Suddenly there was this group of 4 astronauts doing and saying things that completely shift people's perspective. They were enraptured by what was going on. And there was one of the quotes from the crew was, no matter where you're from or what you look like, we're one people. And it was like that every time they said something, every time they showed an image, every time we heard about how far they travel or they were about to lose radio contact with, home base and all the rest of it, it was like it was showing like there's more. You have to go to the thing behind the thing.
Yeah.
Because that's where we find out who we really are in our humanity with one another.
Which, as you said earlier, is what spirituality is really about, isn't it? It's looking in depth at who I am and who we are.
We are together.
And what matters most. I said a talk about the UN.
Yes.
You know, I did a job, as you know, for the UN for about 8 years. I was their special advisor to them around human trafficking, or the problem of human trafficking, and what we do about that. And of course, community is a really key part of that, because when you belong and you're seen and you're known, you become less vulnerable. But many of the people who are trafficked are females, and many of the young people are even children. So part of my work was looking at the UN, the Charter on the Rights of the Child. And interestingly, written way back in the 70s, as I remember, the UN Charter on the Rights of the Child proclaims that every child is entitled to physical and mental health, and it lists various forms of health and care and education, etc., and spiritual health. And I used to say at the time, we used to discuss, we know that spiritual health is so important to our inner sense of being able to balance in life. And yet there's a huge conversation that rages about what spirituality is. You know, we know that spiritual health is equal and as important as physical health and mental health, in having an inner gyroscope that keeps you,
I like that.
keeps you upright and guides you through the life. We know that those with good spiritual health are more likely to recover from an illness quicker. You know, NHS research, etc. We know all these things, and yet people still can't quite pin down what spirituality is, and they argue about it. But it seems to me that whether it's about a commitment to some of the tenets of traditional faiths and religions, or it's something really independent of all of that and personal to yourself, it's what gives you your inner sense of peace and grounding and focus, which enables you to see the bigness of life. And then it's beyond just your own little self-interest. You're part of a bigger story. So it gives you that sense of direction and purpose, which balances you out, because we're talking about the thing behind the thing, and the thing behind balance is a good inner story. Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm thinking about all the, work that we do as Oasis, where we're trying to always be upstream as well as, being with people in their crises. And how do people make sure, people who drive policy decision, like what do you think needs to happen, Steve, so that we are always asking that, what's the thing behind the thing? What about spirituality? What about asking the courageous, curious, bold question? How do we escape that short-termism approach to all of this stuff? My head gets filled with lots of different answers to that question. But I think in the end, perhaps the binding thing is to be grounded, to know yourself, and to know, if you're making policy, the communities you serve. I was talking to a bunch of policymakers last week, actually, and I asked them, it was a good meeting, but they were making social policy, and I asked them, did any of them live on a council estate? Have you ever lived on a council estate? And I said, and still nobody, they're smart, it was a good conversation. Yeah. I said, have you ever had a meal with anyone who lives on a council estate? Have you ever had a meal in a flat on a tough housing estate? There were probably 15 or so policymakers we were talking together. Not one of them, they all admitted it, not one of them. The best they'd done is they'd walked past council estates, if you see what I mean, because rather than go into them, because often they don't have roads and things like that, so you can't drive through them. You've got to walk through them, which is quite dangerous, And the thing is, I wasn't trying to be critical at all. But the further away you are in making the policy from the reality of the situation, the less effective your policy is going to be, the less appropriate your policy is going to be. The further you are away from acknowledging pain in your own life, tragedy in your life, being honest about your life, the less help you're going to be to individuals. So, the doctrine of pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, or here comes another one. Well, I'm not sure they deserve a second or third chance, 3 strikes and you're out.
Yeah.
Rather than saying, well, we're not asking for a second or third chance for this child. They've not had a first chance yet. Give them a first chance. Pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. Well, if you've got no boots, let alone the straps. So anybody who's walked the same walk as the child that's struggling, the young adult who's struggling, the mum who doesn't know how to parent because she's never been loved and parented, for the policymaker that's detached from the situation, or the critic that's detached from the situation, is easy to jump to all the wrong conclusions and not see the thing behind the thing.
I'm just remembering from a school that I taught in, finding a student struggling to walk down a corridor, and they were late to their lesson, and I was very aware that they were going to get shouted at for being, told off different times back then for being late. And me and another member of staff were just with this student, and he was really hobbling on his, and he just kept saying, my feet. And he'd got the right colour school shoes, but I said, show me the bottom of your feet, of your shoes. And they were falling apart. And so, bless him, one of his parents had put a little piece of wood on it and nailed it in, and his feet were, and you could just, he was in pain obviously, and we sorted him out and all the rest of it. But you could jump at that, you're late, just realizing your connection to that human being. This is a human. These are people like us, and just that, it just makes me think, Steve, that this whole thing around the thing behind the thing is, unless we cultivate compassion and curiosity, we will always have distance between us and people. We will always be downstream trying to rescue people. But the more we have and be really intentional about cultivating our sense of compassion, I think it prepares. And I see this in you. I see this exemplified in you. It propels you upstream, doesn't it? To go, what's the thing? What is the thing?
I was very fortunate because, as I would have said before, I was useless at school and failed everything. So going to university wasn't an option for me. Yeah. But somebody who I knew and respected, because by then I wanted to become a church leader and start school and all that kind of stuff. But, I didn't know anything. And this guy who was really famous academic, actually, very famous theologian, academic, brilliant piano player. I remember he went to Sweden to give a theological lecture and learn Swedish just so he could do the lecture. Truly, I'm not joking. He's long since died. But in fact, he lived quite near to me. He was called Dr. George Beasley Murray, a great author and thinker. And he used to take interest in me when I was 16, 17. And he said, when you leave school, Steve, he said, I wouldn't bother going to university. I don't know if he knew that I couldn't go to university even though I wanted to. He said, if I were you, he knew what I wanted to do. Start schools and a house and all the rest of it. He said, if I were you, I'd go and work in a factory.
Brilliant.
Which I subsequently learned is what he did when he left school. But I moved out of London and I went to live in Ashford and I lived on an estate called the Stanhope, which they used to call, still do actually, Stanhope, no hope.
Yeah.
And I lived on that estate and I worked in a factory as a labourer, sweeping floors for 2 years. And then I set up a youth group on the money that I earned and all the rest of it, and a little drama group as well. But here's the thing. Why I'm telling you this story is because we used to have to clock in at 8:15. And it was one of those jobs where my job was to sweep this giant factory floor. There was a team of us that did it, 4 or 5 of us. And I'd sweep and sweep all the way round because what was being produced on the machines created endless gunge and dirt and oil. And I'd sweep up and I'd sweep and sweep and sweep and go around. And I'd clocked in at past. I'd do hours of work and I'd get back to the area where the clock was and it said 8:30. I'm like, oh, no, how could I have been working this long? And the days dragged on and on. But I can't remember the time now. I think it was at 10:30. There was a tea break.
Tea break.
Yeah, the first tea break. And this big
like a siren or a
hooter went.
Yeah.
And everybody went in and they sat in this tea break place.
Yeah.
But they all wore grey overalls.
Yeah.
And they'd been working there all their lives. There were people, they were there.
Yeah.
And if the siren, well, 2 things. If somebody new arrived and sat in someone's seat, the wrong seat at the wrong table, it was like, honestly, like World War III had broken. It genuinely was.
Yeah.
And I couldn't understand it to start with. And the other thing that reached because they had union reps.
Yeah.
And what used to upset them is if the return to work hooter, it was a quarter of an hour, and if the return to work hooter went off 30 seconds or a minute,
everyone
God
out.
forbid. Yeah, it was incredible. They'd send a delegation to see the management who had some offices up above. They'd send this delegation. And I learned so much from that because I used to think how small-minded to start with. And then I realised I was only there for 2 years. And not only that was I only there for 2 years, I knew from the very beginning I was only there for 2 years. And when I was 20, I'd go and do something else. So I could see my way ahead. But I learned that their world had shrunk to the size of the labour they did that had dehumanised them. Their world had shrunk to that thing. And so behind all their anger at losing 30 seconds of sitting at this table sipping their mug of tea was a thing behind the thing.
Yeah.
And the thing was that they didn't feel seen or valued or human by the system. I learned a lot. And fortunately, I got the chance to tell George Beasley Murray in later years that his advice had been pretty good for me.
Yeah. It makes me realise, Steve, that there's no them and us, is there? It's just all of us.
All of us.
All of us. Thank you.